Hey everybody, and welcome back to Blacklist Universe. I am your host, Mike S. Miller, 33-year industry professional from the comic book world, and here I am not doing a redesign of any sort, but I'm actually doing a cover for Rippaverse on Horseman #1, available now at rippaverse.com. I'll put the link in the description, but yeah, this has been a minute in the making. Eric likes to keep things under wraps until he gets to promote them himself, and so I didn't get to show this to nobody. It's just been sitting there on my hard drive, my Dropbox, whatever, my iPad for all this time, waiting for Eric to show it to the world so that I could talk about it. So unfortunately, I did not do my basic layout, which is kind of boring anyways, but my basic layout is, I had to do, when you're doing a cover for a company or another person, you generally do several versions of thumbnails. And so I did, here's the weird thing with me, usually like my first idea is always my best idea. And so like I'll jam out a thumbnail and then I'll do 2 or 3 more, and then I send it to my editor or to Eric in this case, and lo and behold, they always pick my first one. It's not that I get lazy or anything on my other ones, it's just that, I don't know, something about my first initial, I guess you could say my instinctive layout is always the one everybody tends to like best, and so I think it's probably been greater than 9 times out of 10, probably closer to like 19 times out of 20, that an editor will pick my first thumbnail, my first shot out of the gate. And it's something I learned back in when I was working on JLA, is that my initial layouts, that's why I stopped doing thumbnails of my actual pages, because my initial drawing was always much looser and more natural and fluid than when I have to redraw things over and over again. Okay, so here's where this video gets controversial. AI. I am a user of AI as a tool. I believe that, for most professional comic book artists out there, over the decades, we have used photographs in certain situations. Usually we will reference them, but in certain situations, you'll actually just trace over the photograph in order to drop a very complicated background or, whatever. We're always using reference. If you're a comic book artist and you're not using reference, you're doing it wrong. And AI has become this tool where I can have unique stuff for backgrounds, whether it's a vehicle, whether here it's like, all right, I want like an old shack type bar, because I wanted it to be like a bar fight. And it's like, what am I going to do? Go cycle through 400 pictures of bars and try to cobble together. And it's like, so I just went to AI and I put in the description of exactly what I wanted to do for the background. And weirdly, it was actually the first one that came up that I liked the best, that fit the angle of what I was doing. And so I just open that up, put it in the background, drop it out. And then what I'll do is I'll use that as sort of my breakdown / loose pencils. And then I'll go over it and I'll ink it just in the same way I'm inking my own everything here, right? The inking in this process is always like the most fun part. Well, it's inks. It's black and white. It's a black and white illustration. So the black is obviously going to be the starkest part. So why Horseman? Why did I end up drawing Horseman for Eric? Is because long ago, I made this sort of like, I don't know if it's a proclamation, but I said on Twitter, I was like, hey, Eric, do me a favor and never ask me to work for you, because I don't want to be seen as unobjective when I'm, commenting or criticizing or whatever it is I'm saying about Rippaverse projects, because, it's hard to not to be, because, my friend Kanan White is the art director there. But just in general, all these people on Twitter would be like, you're just saying nice stuff because you're trying to get work from Eric. And I was like, no, I'm just saying what I think. And the fact that I'm not hating on it because you're in some weird, bizarre hate Rippa cult makes you think that anyone that has an opposite idea or an opposite opinion is somehow just trying to get work from Eric. And so I was like, you know what, Eric, and I said it publicly, please don't ever ask me to work for you, because I don't want to have my opinion looked at in that way. And then this freaking fat retard said something so egregious. Honestly, I can't even remember what it was right now. That I was like, you know what? Screw this crap. And then I reached out to Eric and I'm like, you know what? I know I said this, but if you ever want me to do something, let's do something. And so he's like, yeah, you want to do a cover? And I'm like, yeah. So, and I'm like, what do you want to do? And it was I had just done the Horseman redesign. Well, not redesign. The Horseman video here. It's on the YouTube. It's on my channel, where I took Horseman and I made him into sort of a Marvel Rivals character, so like a Rippaverse Rivals design style character, and he loved that. So he's like, yeah, man, you know, Horseman. And plus I like Horseman because it's I read the book, and you know, I love Chuck Dixon, and Joe Bennett did freaking great work. And I have my critiques, and usually my critiques on Joe's stuff, because Joe's freaking phenomenal, but his inkers are inconsistent. Some inkers are just awesome, and then some inkers are not as good as the others, and so that's where my criticism lays in that. But the package of Horseman was awesome. That opening train scene was just freaking balls out. I loved it. If you haven't seen it, you know, when you go to Rippaverse.com and you get this Horseman #1, because this is #1 for a miniseries, and this is the throwback cover that I'm doing here. When you get that, if you haven't gotten the original Horseman, grab that one too, because it's great. Joe Bennett, freaking awesome. Chuck Dixon, awesome. So it's a great combination. It's a great book, and I was thrilled, in fact, to be able to do a cover for Horseman #1. And so there it is. That's why I did it, and this is how I'm doing it, or how I did it. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like AI for, you know, because they're afraid that they think Terminator was a documentary, and that we're all going to get destroyed by our robot overlords someday because AI has come to sentience. But I don't really think that's the case. I think AI is a tool, and I think that people who try to use AI as a weapon against artists, they're tools too. So I might lose some viewers for saying that, but look, I'm an artist. I remember when digital art came into the fore, and I had a very similar opinion about, you know, it's like, man, it's like digital, you know, you're doing everything digital. What happened to your pen and your ink and your quill and your brush and your da-da-da-da-da-da? And now I do things digitally. I don't do everything digitally. I still love working on paper, but I remember having that sort of Luddite opinion about technology when digital everything came out. I mean, even digital coloring. I mean, look how digital coloring changed the industry. Now everybody just almost exclusively does digital coloring. But I'm old. I grew up in a time when, you know, coloring was never digital. It was always like hand done what do you call those things? Ruby cells cut. I can't even remember the name of it. It doesn't matter. Everything was done by hand. And then digital came along. And at first, digitally, some of the digital coloring was a little freaking wonky, right? But it became the norm, and it got awesome. So the same thing with when people started getting tablets and using tablets to draw, iPads to draw. I'm drawing this on my iPad. It was the same sort of thing. It's a digital revolution that moved the fork, and a lot of people, and I was one of them, hated on it. And then now AI comes out, and no, I'm not gonna probably go buy a comic book that's completely illustrated in AI. But as a professional, you know, I could just dig around Google images for like an hour looking for a barn or a bar, and not finding one, and then maybe having to piece together 2 or 3 different bars to reference in order to drop in a background. And then, you know, oftentimes it would just, I'd drop it in, I'd lighten it up, and I'd trace it. I did this in Injustice with like motorcycles and cars and stuff, right? You drop it in, you blue line it, and then you trace it in your style. When you're an inker, you have to translate. You don't want to just, you know, get a marker and just trace every line exactly as it is. That's not creating something new. So you'll see that when I get to inking the background here, the background doesn't end up looking like the background that is here. But the basic structures, the basic layout, it leaves it so that I can use that as like a breakdown and just, here we go, where I bring out my perspective lines, which is great on Procreate, by the way. You use Procreate, you can use these perspective lines, and you just drop them in, and then you can just bang, 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 line those suckers out, and you don't have to worry about it. It saves so much time. And again, that's a thing. That's a technology that I didn't have a couple of years ago, which so speeds up the production of buildings or freaking anything where you have to work in perspective. I'm using a digital technology to help me do that. And now I'm using the AI as a layout so that I drop that digital technology on top of digital technology, and it just speeds up, frankly, something nobody cares about. Generally speaking, backgrounds are afterthoughts, like unless you're like doing an image where it's like the characters are part of the background, like, they're teeny tiny in the background, and then the background becomes the main image. But when you're doing a big action shot like this, honestly, nobody's looking at the background. I've been doing this for 33 years. Nobody's really looking at the back. You know who's looking at the background though? Other artists, and they're or people who are looking for Easter eggs, right? Because that's the fun part when you're a comic book artist. That's where you drop your Easter eggs. Yeah, so you can see again when I'm going in here, I'm dropping my own textures. I'm not tracing everything in this AI backdrop. I'm just using the general structure, and then I'm going in and I'm putting my own textures in there. Textures I would have done with a quill and a straight ruler, like a metal edged straight ruler when I was younger. Oh, not when I was younger, just a couple years ago. Or if I was doing this on paper, I'll just say that. And then, I throw in some bullet holes and like reflections to match on the mirror. And here's my Easter eggs. I put my signature on there first on one of the bottles, and then Jerkmonger Jen, and then Kev Hulk 23, volume 23, olive juice, which is an old joke that between me and my wife, because when you say olive juice but you're not speaking out loud, your mouth says I love you. I know, it's so romantic. You can't. I know, you just cried, didn't you? It's so romantic. Anyways, yeah, then I just went in and I dropped in the Banda de la Muerta tattoos, because Banda de la Muerta is my version of MS-13 in comic book universes. So it's like I do it in Lone Star, my own book, LoneStarComic.com. If you have not gotten Lone Star, you can still get it at LoneStarComic.com. Link in the description. And so, okay, funnily, I actually made it MS-13 at first, and then like when my friends saw it, they're like, bro, MS-13 is in San Diego. I don't think they're going to like you, and they're freaking psychotic, so they're probably not going to like you drawing. Having your superhero beat snot out of a bunch of MS-13. So I'm like, oh. So I had to make up my own cartel, and so I made them Banda de la Muerta, the Gang of the Dead or something like that. I don't speak Spanish. But anyways, there we are, ladies and gentlemen, my Horseman cover in all its black and white glory. If you want to see it in color again, go to Rippaverse.com and check out Horseman #1. It's available for pre-order right now. This is one of the exclusive limited covers, and I think Eric prints everything in advance. So there's a limited number of these. If you want to grab one of my covers, and then maybe if you see me at a convention sometime somewhere, you can get it signed. Anyways, go Rippaverse.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Do all that fun stuff, and hopefully I will see you all on the next video.